Fold out the metal tables. Snap the legs into place until they click. Somewhere a coffee urn is already gurgling, and the fellowship hall smells like margarine, canned pineapple, and carpet that has soaked up 40 years of Sunday mornings. This is where it happened every single week, in church basements from Ohio to Oklahoma. A long line of covered dishes, foil peeled back at the edges, name tags taped to the bottom of glass casserole dishes so nobody's Pyrex went home with the wrong family. Today there are 25 dishes on that table that almost nobody makes anymore, and each one is a small piece of a world that quietly disappeared. This isn't just a list of old recipes. Stick with us, because by the time we reach the final dish, you'll understand something bigger about why we ate the way we ate, and why that particular kind of togetherness is so hard to find on a table today. Watergate salad. Bright green, flecked with tiny marshmallows and crushed pineapple, folded together with pistachio pudding mix and a tub of whipped topping, Watergate salad showed up at every potluck holding a pastel Tupperware bowl with a lid that never quite matched. Someone's aunt swore the name came from the scandal. Another swore it came from a hotel bar recipe. Either way, it tasted like the mid-70s in a single bite. It faded because pudding mix salads eventually felt dated, and instant everything gave way to a generation chasing made from scratch on every label. Deviled eggs on a special tray. Every church had one woman who owned the actual deviled egg tray, the oval one with the scalloped indentations, and you knew her casserole dish by sight before you knew her last name. Paprika dusted on top like a signature. Today's version shows up store-bought in a plastic clamshell, mayonnaise swapped for a trendier spread. The ritual of somebody's grandmother piping yolks with a butter knife, standing at the counter in her good dress, has quietly disappeared along with the tray itself. Ambrosia salad. Coconut flakes, canned mandarin oranges, maraschino cherries, and marshmallows folded into sour cream or whipped cream, served in a cut glass bowl that only came out for holidays and potlucks. Ambrosia tasted like a celebration even on an ordinary Sunday. It slipped away because canned fruit fell out of fashion. Sour cream salads started sounding heavy to modern ears, and fewer kitchens keep a jar of maraschino cherries in the back of the fridge the way grandmothers once did without even thinking about it. 7-layer salad. Built in a clear glass dish so every ribbon of color showed through the sides. Lettuce, peas, celery, onion, bacon, cheese, and a sealed layer of mayonnaise on top holding it all together like frosting. Women would arrive early just to build theirs on the counter so the layers stayed crisp. It has mostly vanished because bagged salad kits took over, and the patience for building something layer by layer, for the visual show of it, doesn't fit a world that wants dinner on the table in 10 minutes flat. Green bean casserole with real cream sauce. Not the can-only version, but the kind where a grandmother actually made her own mushroom cream sauce from scratch, then topped it with fried onions she made herself in a cast-iron skillet. It took real time, real butter, real patience standing over a stovetop. The homemade version disappeared first, replaced by the can shortcut, and now even that simpler version is losing ground to fresher green bean dishes that skip the casserole format completely. Congealed salad with vegetables suspended inside. Lime jello with shredded carrots and cabbage set in a ring mold, unmolded onto a lettuce leaf with a dollop of mayonnaise in the center hole. Grandmothers had entire cabinets of molds shaped like fish, wreaths and stars just for this purpose. It required real technique, layering flavors so they set at different times without bleeding together. Gelatin salads fell out of favor as the decades moved on, and now that particular cabinet of molds mostly sits in an attic somewhere, unused. Funeral potatoes. Hash browns baked in cream of chicken soup, sour cream, and a blanket of cheddar cheese, topped with crushed cornflakes fried in butter. Named because it showed up at every reception after a burial, but it lived just as often at potlucks, where the crunchy topping disappeared within the first 10 minutes every time. Fewer churches host large potluck receptions today. Meals get catered instead, and a dish tied so tightly to a specific ritual naturally fades when the ritual itself becomes rare. Homemade yeast rolls. Somebody always brought a dish towel-covered basket of rolls still warm from the oven, dough that had been started that morning, kneaded by hand, left to rise near a warm stove. The butter melted the second it touched them. Store bakeries and bread machines replaced the slow rise in the flour on the counter. Making yeast rolls from scratch takes real time most people no longer have on a Sunday morning before church, so the basket now usually holds something bought instead of made. Chicken and rice casserole. Canned cream of chicken soup, cooked rice, and shredded chicken, baked under a layer of crushed Ritz crackers and a drizzle of melted butter, in a dish that traveled to 3 potlucks a month under the same person's name. It was cheap, filling, and endlessly repeatable, the kind of dish a grandmother could make with her eyes closed. As families shrank and processed convenience foods came under scrutiny, this exact combination of soup can casseroles started disappearing from church potluck tables everywhere. Deviled ham spread with crackers. A can of deviled ham mixed with mayonnaise, sweet pickle relish, and a dash of mustard, spread thick on saltine crackers and arranged in a fan on a plate. It sat on the appetizer table next to the pimento cheese, gone within the first 15 minutes because it required almost no effort to eat standing up while balancing a paper plate. Canned meats fell out of favor as fresher options became normal, and deviled ham slowly disappeared from grocery shelves and church tables alike. Pimento cheese spread. Sharp cheddar, cream cheese, jarred pimentos, and a spoonful of mayonnaise, mixed by hand and spread on white bread or crackers, a southern staple that traveled north through church cookbooks mailed between relatives. Every family swore their version was the original. It hasn't vanished entirely, but it has become rare outside the South, since fewer regional dishes cross state lines the way they did when church cookbooks and family reunions carried recipes from kitchen to kitchen across the whole country. Tuna noodle casserole. Egg noodles, canned tuna, cream of mushroom soup, and a crunchy topping of crushed potato chips, baked until bubbling at the edges. It was a Friday staple in Catholic parishes observing meatless days, showing up at potlucks in the same glass dish every single time. As fewer households strictly observe meatless Fridays and canned tuna casseroles feel dated to younger cooks, this dish has slipped from a weekly certainty to something almost nobody under 50 has ever actually made themselves. Baked ham with pineapple rings and cloves. A whole ham studded with cloves in a diamond pattern, pineapple rings pinned on with toothpicks and a maraschino cherry in the center of each ring, glazed with brown sugar until the top turned glossy. It was the showpiece dish, carried in with both hands and set down like a trophy. Whole hams take real oven space and real time, and as smaller households cook smaller cuts of meat, the showpiece centerpiece ham has mostly disappeared from the average table. Homemade baked beans with bacon. Navy beans soaked overnight, simmered slowly with molasses, brown sugar, mustard, and strips of bacon laid across the top. Baked low and slow for hours in a heavy pot. The smell alone announced whose dish it was before you saw the label. Canned baked beans took over because they were faster and nearly as sweet, and the overnight soak, the hours of slow baking, the specific molasses ratio passed down on an index card, quietly stopped getting made by anyone under retirement age. Cornbread in a cast iron skillet. Buttermilk cornbread baked in a well-seasoned skillet that had been in the family for 3 generations, sliced into wedges and served with a crock of real butter. The crust came out dark and crisp because the skillet had been heating in the oven before the batter ever touched it. Fewer kitchens keep a dedicated cast iron skillet seasoned and ready, and boxed cornbread mixes replaced the buttermilk and skillet method that used to be second nature to almost every grandmother in the pews. Macaroni salad with sweet pickle relish. Elbow macaroni tossed with mayonnaise, sweet pickle relish, chopped celery, and hard-boiled eggs, made the night before so the flavors could sit and blend overnight in the refrigerator. It sat next to the potato salad on every single table, and the 2 bowls emptied at almost exactly the same rate. Pasta salads today lean toward vinaigrettes and fresh vegetables, and the specific mayonnaise and relish combination that define this dish has slowly become something only older cooks still remember making. Potato salad with mustard and paprika. Boiled potatoes, chopped hard-boiled eggs, yellow mustard, mayonnaise, and a dusting of paprika across the top. Made in a bowl so large it needed both hands to carry across the parking lot. Every family had a strong opinion about mustard versus no mustard, and arguments over whose potato salad was better were half the fun of the whole event. As potlucks themselves became less frequent, the giant shared bowl of potato salad, built to feed 50 people at once, simply stopped getting made. Banana pudding with vanilla wafers. Layers of vanilla pudding, sliced bananas and vanilla wafers, built in a trifle dish so the layers showed through the glass, topped with real whipped cream or toasted meringue. It disappeared fast at dessert tables because the wafers on top stayed crisp only for the first hour. Making pudding from scratch on the stovetop, then layering it carefully while it was still warm, took a kind of patience that instant pudding and store-bought parfait cups have mostly replaced in modern kitchens. Chess pie. A simple southern pie made from eggs, sugar, butter, and a splash of vinegar or cornmeal, baked until the filling set into something between custard and candy. It required no exotic ingredients, just pantry staples a grandmother always had on hand, which made it the pie of last resort and also somehow the most beloved. As pie baking itself becomes rarer in everyday kitchens, replaced by bakery boxes and pre-made crusts, humble regional pies like this one have quietly slipped out of most people's recipe boxes entirely. Jell-O salad with fruit cocktail suspended inside. Orange or lime Jell-O with canned fruit cocktail suspended in perfect little clusters throughout, chilled in a bundt pan and turned out onto a cake plate so the ring shape held. Getting the fruit to hang suspended instead of sinking to the bottom took real skill, chilling the gelatin partially before folding the fruit in. That specific kitchen trick, passed down by watching a grandmother do it at the counter, has mostly disappeared along with the taste for gelatin desserts in general. Chicken tetrazzini. Spaghetti noodles tossed with chicken, mushrooms, and a sherry cream sauce, baked under a layer of Parmesan until the top turned golden and slightly crisp. It felt fancier than the average casserole, the kind of dish reserved for a bigger potluck or a visiting pastor. Cream sauces built from scratch, the splash of sherry, the specific technique of baking pasta in sauce until it turned golden on top, have largely been replaced by simpler, faster weeknight pasta dishes that skip the oven step. Waldorf salad. Chopped apples, celery, and walnuts folded into mayonnaise, sometimes with raisins mixed in, served in a bowl lined with lettuce leaves. It bridged the gap between salad and dessert, sweet enough for kids and crunchy enough for the adults who wanted something besides another casserole. Fresh apple salad still exists today, but the mayonnaise-based version with the specific walnut-celery-apple ratio has become something closer to a museum piece, remembered fondly but rarely actually recreated in a modern kitchen. Deviled crab, or crab-stuffed something. In coastal church communities, a dish of crab meat mixed with breadcrumbs, egg, and seasoning, stuffed back into clean shells or baked in a dish and served with crackers, showed up whenever crab was in season and affordable. It was a regional specialty that traveled only as far as the coastline. As seafood prices rose and fewer people learned to pick crab meat by hand, this particular potluck dish became a delicacy remembered by fewer and fewer families outside the areas where it once started. Homemade applesauce with cinnamon. Apples peeled by hand at the kitchen table, cooked down slowly with cinnamon and a touch of sugar, then ladled into mason jars still warm, brought to the potluck in the same jars used for canning all season long. The smell of cinnamon and simmering apples meant fall was here, and church suppers were about to get busier. Store-bought applesauce in plastic cups replaced the mason jar version, and the entire ritual of a fall canning afternoon has faded along with it. The recipe card itself, passed hand to hand. Not a dish, but the thing that carried every dish here, an index card in careful cursive, stained at the corners, tucked into a metal box on somebody's kitchen counter. Copied out longhand for a daughter or a neighbor after supper. That card was how a recipe survived, how a specific pinch of this and dash of that got passed down instead of lost. Search engines and printed recipes replaced the card, and something about handing a piece of paper to another woman at church in her own handwriting disappeared along with it. That's the real thread running through all 25 of these dishes. Every casserole, every Jell-O mold, every basket of warm rolls was never really about the food itself. It was about a whole community proving they showed up for each other, one covered dish at a time, on a folding table in a basement that smelled like coffee and love. The tables are still there in a lot of churches. What's missing is everyone who used to fill them. If this took you back to a fellowship hall you haven't thought about in years, hit like and subscribe for more of these forgotten pieces of American life.